Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment of our program brought to you by Safety Systems. For nearly 20 years, Safety Systems has been protecting East Tennessee homes and businesses. They have the best equipment you can get, and they offer terrific monitoring services and emergency services. Best of all, they're local. They're right here. When you call them, you're calling a Knoxville phone number. Local Security Solutions, folks. Safety Systems. All right. Back with our panel, we got VFL Sterling Hinton, we got Ryan Callahan representing the media, and we got VFL's Daniel Hood and Will Overstreet down there. Tennessee and Butch Jones has made quite a few coaching changes since he got here. And I think every time he's done it, people have applauded the fact that there's been a change. They haven't always applauded who was brought in. One where they did love it was Bob Shoop. When that rumor came out that they're talking to Bob Shoop, oh, there were ticker tape parades in the making down. Everybody wanted to get this guy. And it was like, oh, we're going to lose him? And they got him. Well, let's take a look here at some numbers. It was a risk, and we said it was a risk to move on from John Jancic. His last 17 games are on top. Shoop's first 17 games are on bottom. Now, on paper, Shoop's dealt with a lot of injuries. Got to factor that in. You also have to factor in he's been dealing with a better roster than the one Jancic was running with. Okay, so you're a touchdown worse in defense, giving up a lot more yards. That's a concern. Then you go on the offensive side of the board, on the side of the ball, and we'll just talk about coordinators here. But Mike DeBoard leaves. Don't know how hard you fought to keep him or what the story was there in terms of what the real reason for departure was. But you decide to go with someone on the staff, and Larry Scott. It's 4 games in, but it hasn't looked good. Now, to give him a little bit of cover, he's having to break in a new quarterback, and it's not always very easy. But overall, he rolled the dice on some of these coaching moves. It doesn't look right now like it's working in his favor. Thoughts? You disagree? Sterling, you disagree with me? Too early to tell?
Well, I think it's too early to tell. I don't think it's too early to tell. The fact that we are 3-1, I want to stay on that. That's my personal thing, thought process. Next week is going to be a real big game for everybody involved with Tennessee football.
I really want to see how Tennessee's defense is going to look this next week against Jim Chaney. You know, we know what Chaney is. He was here for years. I want to see how Shoop's able to handle it. I mean, you think about it. You got a bye week coming after this game. Everything you got has got to go in this week. And let's see what we can do.
Will they roll the dice? What do you on some of these moves?
I think it's not hard to say that if you had Jancic here for the last 2 years, I think you'd be a better defense. I think you'd have a better record as a team. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, there is some of that of transitioning to a new defense. There are going to be some growing pains and things that go wrong. But if they were been able to keep him and have consistency there, they would be a better team today, and they would have a better record last year.
Yeah, I think it looks like Shoop's defense may be, well, we'll see. Now, it's looking as good as it's looked since it's been at Tennessee's last couple of weeks. But there's no question last year, and that was the thing, he made the move. Shoop was hired to come in and win the championship. And the irony is you might have won a championship if you hadn't gone through a coaching change there in hindsight. Hindsight's 20/20.
I think it's too early to tell on the coaching changes he made this year, but I think when you look at the switch to Bob Shoop, that was a big risk. And as you said, I think the results would be just as good, if not better, if you'd stuck with Jancic. So I think that's the one that you'd say hasn't paid off. This year's moves, we'll see.
And of course, there were extenuating circumstances in the Jancic situation that we all know about.
And I think with Shoop right now, I think really you got to look at him as these 4 games because, I mean, this is his staff. I mean, last year he was winning or he wasn't really winning, but he had Strip, he had Martinez, he had those guys like there. So, of course, Jancic's going to do better with those guys or those guys he brought in. And so I still wonder about how much that affected Shoop by not having his D-line coach, his secondary coach.
Fair enough.
I would add, too.
So you go over there and deal with these guys. So you're going to be quiet in this segment. I understand that.
It's not a quiet thing. It's that I'm just listening because I always reflect back to this team, now 89 team. We had a new defensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator, who ended up being a legendary coach. Give this thing time to happen, and it will.
If you're judging this year, I think this team is not as talented as last year's team,
Yes.
and I think that's a big issue. You can't judge this staff because they've taken a step back talent-wise.
All off season, I pointed to 6 spots. Said from summer to summer, you know, last July compared to this July, you were breaking in a new number 1 quarterback, a new number 1 running back, a new number 1 receiver, a new number 1 defensive lineman, a new top linebacker, and a new top cornerback from July to July. We know some of those guys got hurt last year. Out of those 6 spots, the only one that is better is Kelly. I think Kelly and Kamara was good, but I think Kelly is more consistent if he's got somebody to open a hole for him. But I just think that you don't have as much talent this year. So that does have to be factored in. But overall, you made the changes. A lot of people like the changes. Get rid of that Cincinnati staff. And now it's not worked out yet in terms of the eye test. It hadn't looked pretty yet.
I
Real
will
quickly.
say this, though, too, is that I do like the idea of keeping Larry Scott. You know, when we look at the issues we had on defense last year, bringing in someone new, I think the offense is playing better than as if we would have brought in a new offense coordinator trying to put in a new scheme with those guys.
Okay. Well, I wonder about what if they'd had a quarterback coach all these years working with these guys? Hey, that sounds like a good question for the next segment. Come on back. We'll talk about quarterback coach. We'll talk about buyout. We'll talk about the win total for this season. We got a lot more to discuss on the Sports Source. Come on back.